House of Commons passes motion calling for a public inquiry into foreign interference. This is the Great White North Report. So the House of Commons voted on a NDP motion calling for the public inquiry into foreign interference of Canadian affairs by the Chinese Communist Party. This has been something that's been going on for a few weeks now, and the Liberals have so far been unresponsive until fresh allegations considering Liberal MP Han Dong from the Toronto Don Valley North riding. Global News published a story alleging he advised a senior Chinese diplomat, the Consular General, back in February 2021 that Beijing should hold off freeing Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, who were being held prisoner at the time as part of hostage diplomacy in the Meng the Merciless case, that they should be held and not returned home. Global News cited two unnamed national security sources that said Dong suggested releasing the two men would be helpful to the Conservatives and not the Liberals. I don't see how that could be the case, because if the Liberals managed to secure their release, it would be a vindication that their way was the correct way. But it's interesting to know that the two men were released on September 24, 2021, 4 days after the federal election. So I think the CCP was waiting to see who would win the election before making a decision, and also they'd already cut a deal with Biden anyway. So the NDP motion passed with a vote of 172 for and 149 against. So obviously the Liberals did not vote for this motion. Should be noted that MP Han Dong, who recently stepped down from the Liberal Party and is now being an independent backbencher, he also voted for the motion. He would like to clear his name. I'm sitting on the fence on whether he did or not, simply because we just don't know. He did have private talks with the Consular General of the Communist Party, and he does have connections in China. So I'm leaning more that he did, but also that I will give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, it should be noted that this motion passed is non-binding, which means the government does not have to do anything. They don't have to call a public inquiry if they don't want to. They've already gone to the step of asking for a rapporteur, David Johnson, who is a close Trudeau friend. And if he says we need a public inquiry, then Trudeau will probably cave in. Until then, he's not going to do it. But this does indicate that the majority of the House of Commons wants a public inquiry, though it's a pretty slim majority, and it's going to put more pressure on the Trudeau government. But even with this motion done by the NDP, Singh refuses to drop his support for the Liberals, because he knows if he does so, and it calls for an election, a non-confidence vote, it's going to trigger another election, and he's not going to win any more support. The fact that he's supporting the Liberals makes him look even worse. The best thing they could hope for is to win a few more seats. Meanwhile, the Conservatives under Poilievre, they've been asking for a public inquiry ever since the story broke out back in January.
1,000 days, the two Michaels sat hopeless in a windowless cell.
Should we know that Trudeau did not sit in on this question period? He was not present, so it fell to his underlings. Melanie Joly, who I believe is the Foreign Affairs Minister, she's here to answer the question.
And encouraged them to delay the release of these two Michaels for partisan Liberal gain. The intelligence services that came up with this information to the media would have told the Prime Minister. When did they tell him?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
So Poilievre, he wants to know when the Prime Minister and his office were informed by the National Security Services. Now, I don't agree with this Liberal response. We did not do everything we possibly could have to get the two Michaels home. China used hostage diplomacy. We could have easily have done the same thing, but we lacked the balls to do it. Trudeau would not give his balls a tug.
Would be coming back safe home. Otherwise, is actually false.
Leader of the Opposition.
We have two members of our national security services.
So again, Poilievre keeps asking the same question over and over again.
Told the Chinese not to release the two.
And he's been doing this for several weeks now about
twice asked
China's foreign
when
interference
the Prime Minister,
in our
his office,
elections.
or his
Now, I do believe it does happen.
informed of this startling revelation. So I'm going to ask a third
And in
time.
a close
I ask
election,
the
it
minister
will
to
matter.
answer.
But when the election's a
When did the Prime
landslide
Minister become
for a
aware
certain party,
of these
for any party, it's not
allegations?
going to matter too much.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, September 24th.
But again, she's going back to
2021
September 24th,
was a
after
great day
4
for
days
Canada.
after the election.
It was the
The
day
two
when
Michaels
the
came
two
home.
Michaels,
Well, they should have been
Michael
home a lot
Ford
sooner.
and Michael Spavor, came back safely home.
The fact that
to
the
Canada.
two Michaels were in horrible
And I
conditions
think
in
it
a
was
Chinese
day
prison,
when this
with
government,
no access
all
to
members of
consul-
this House,
to the
all
consular.
Canadians were proud.
and we
of
had
what
Meg
we
the
done
Merciless
because
in one of her $1 million
the two Michaels
homes in
were
Vancouver,
arbitrarily
shopping,
detained
eating out, doing
for
all
too
sorts of
long
stuff.
in China.
The contrast is
And
amazing.
Mr. Speaker, this will always be our party as a
We
government.
need to toughen
We'll
up
always stand up
and double
against
down
any
on
form of
certain
arbitrary
things.
detention
And that was one of
and
them.
state-to-state
And the fact that the
relations.
Liberals, they just let it slide. The Americans did all the work for us, really.
This non-answer is extremely.
Poilievre's right. The answer is
We
extremely
have
It's
revelations
extremely troubling.
from
The non-answer. They
Canada's
will
top security
refuse to answer a
forces
simple question. When did you
told
find
the
out?
media
Because they know
that a Liberal
that
MP
the answer will hurt them
asked the Chinese
even
consulate
more.
to keep two Canadians in torture in a windowless cell. I asked
My question is, why haven't Carver and Spavor
times.
themselves stepped up and talked?
when
Like, they should be
did the
getting
Prime
book
Minister
deals for
become
this.
Aware of these
Why are they being
revelations? I asked
hushed?
again, when?
That's something I don't understand. Like, normally you'd be on the talk show circuit
Foreign Affairs.
Mr.
by
Speaker,
now.
I would like to thank all the members of this House that were
They must have had to
involved in
sign
making
something
sure
by the Canadian
that
government
we
to keep
could
quiet.
raise the case of the two Michaels for 2 years. Because
2
we
years, worked with friends and allies in different states around the world. And that doesn't matter. You have to play
that
tough.
we could advocate their case,
We could have taken
and that on September
all our
24th,
get all the Canadians
they
out
would
of
be
China.
coming back here in Canada. And so in
Take
that
all our
sense,
consular staff
we
out
will
of China,
always stand up
close
against any
down,
form of
move our
arbitrary
embassy over to
detention.
Taipei,
This is part
and
of our
tell them,
priority
hey,
in terms of foreign
this is what
policy.
we will do.
In
We will
April
move
in
to
Toronto,
Taipei
we
and
will
give
be
our
hosting
recognition to
an
Taiwan.
arbitrary detention
That would have
summit
scared the
because
Chinese more
the
than
world
anything.
needs to know that what
That
happened to the two
that loss of
Michaels
face.
was unacceptable.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The importance of this question cannot be overstated. If the Prime Minister knew that a member of his Liberal caucus was working to keep two Canadian citizens arbitrarily and illegally incarcerated in windowless cells, potentially being
Like how he
tortured,
asked us a
he
third
knew that
time.
and did nothing, that would be a devastating.
See, we don't know if Carver and
scandal
Spavor were
against
actually
our
tortured
national
because they
interest.
haven't
So
stepped
I'm
up and said
simply
anything.
asking for the government to clarify. On what date did the Prime Minister find out
Poilievre wants
revelation
specifics. He wants
that
to
one
know
of his
why.
MPs may have helped keep our people in jail?
The Honourable Minister.
You can see she's getting frustrated.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister knew very well what was happening to the two Michaels and made sure that his government would be
If
standing
Trudeau knew
against China
damn well what
in
the
context of their arbitrary
two Michaels are
detention.
going through, why did he not detain a few of them?
In that sense, we will never
Put Meg the
accept
Merciless in a
any
cell.
form of premise that this
Our legal
government
system is too
and
soft on that.
Canadians didn't
We
work
need
enough
a
to bring
mirror
them back
policy.
home. It was our priority, and
You do that to ours,
can-
we'll do that to
can
you.
Be convinced that it will always be our priority when it comes to any form of consular cases or any form of arbitrarily detained Canadians in this world.
I feel Canada didn't do enough. So that was the exchange between Poilievre and the Melanie Joly of the Liberal Party. And it kept going around and around like that. Everyone was asking during question period on foreign interference. They kept asking the Liberals when they found out or when they were informed about the interference claims. And to no response. They keep going running around in circles. The question now for Canadians is, do we need a public inquiry? I believe we do so. So any Canadians out there, let me know, should we go through with the public inquiry? And should we hold people accountable? Let me know in the comments section. And until next time, this has been the Great White North Report.
I'm in love.